Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers. I've been talking about a very interesting book, Raising the Bar. It's this book here. It's by Willan Publishing, which is well-known publishers for a lot of textbooks and also a lot of work on criminology, which is one of the areas I teach. And this book is called Raising the Bar, Preventing Aggression in and Around Bars, Pubs and Clubs, and it's the authors are Kathryn and Ross Homel. Now, it's an interesting book. You can see it's a hardback, and it's standard sort of book from Willan. There's a lot of detail, and there are not too many sort of notes of any sort in it. But what you have got at the back is an extremely useful bibliography and an index. But you fortunately haven't got very much in the way of footnotes, which is helpful. It's about 270 pages long, something like that. As I say, it's an interesting book for a number of reasons. I've produced a review on Flickr, which you'll see here, and it's quite a long, detailed review. And I've given it a comment on Amazon and all the other internet sites. I've said a swift, half-full, half-empty argument. And that really sums up the problem that we have with how we license pubs and what we do with them. Now, I speak not just as a barrister at law, but also as someone who's been a counsellor and chaired licensing committee meetings. And also, of course, I've appeared in court, both defending and making applications for licenses over the last 20 odd years. What I've said is this, because it's a good book and it's well researched. I've said pubs, bars and clubs are social meeting places, which in an ideal world should be convivial and friendly. But as the authors of this publication, Raising the Bar, point out, nowhere is ideal, at least in Western culture. Presumably that means the English-speaking world, where the consumption of alcohol is involved. Obviously we exclude certain countries for religious reasons. In the excellent foreword to this book, Alasdair Forysth from the Glasgow Centre for the Study of Violence, hence the criminology link, observes that much violence or disorderly behaviour can be described as, quote, alcohol-related, and that the area where such violence and aggression appears to be the most obvious and the most public is the barroom environment. Forget, of course, about things like football matches, which are a slightly different socio-criminological issue. So this is an important book about an increasingly serious problem of aggression, violence and injury in and around public drinking establishments, which in the era of greater affluence and leisure have become an essential component of the nighttime economy. We're talking here, of course, about drinking houses rather than pub restaurant places, but we're also talking about clubs, where of course a lot of problems are with extended licensing hours. The authors, Kathryn and Ross Homel, have exhaustively researched the subject from a wealth of sources, mainly in Canada, Australia and the United Kingdom, pointing to the fact that the problem of alcohol-related violence leading to criminal behaviour is actually an international one. Okay, forget about the European dimension and say the way the French and perhaps some other continental countries look at alcohol. They have the same sorts of problems, but in a different way. So the issue is how to control it and preferably stop it altogether. Obviously that's what we'd like to do, and many communities certainly feel that way, although the licensing legislation has gone the other way and increased the problem for many. The authors have aimed ultimately to provide directions and guidance for curtailing such violence through a variety of preventative and regulatory strategies which they set out, recognising that the establishments concerned operate in diverse communities and cultures, and of course amid the diversity there is one causative factor, which is alcohol abuse. And remember, just because there's a religious view about this, don't assume that people who are meant to abstain do, because they don't. And that of course is a much bigger problem, because lying equals drinking, and that's one of the problems that we have in the criminal courts regularly. Graham and Homel offer interested readers here the benefits of their 3 decades of research into the relationship between alcohol and violence. They made a thorough, thoughtful and well substantiated analysis of the effects on behaviour of certain key factors. They are the drinking environment, staff behaviour, and the regulatory policies and practices which are set out. And the work they've created has some considerable influence, in my view, in formulating policies aimed at creating safer bars, which is what we're obviously all interested in. Their research methods have centred on the practical, from direct observation and interviews with barroom patrons and staff who have possibly been affected by barroom violence, either directly or indirectly. And this therefore is certainly a superior approach to the exclusively academic research project, which relies on secondary sources and official statistics. And we all know what the statistics mean, because they don't give the real picture. There are many real-life incidents featured here, as well as case studies of how the problem has been tackled in various countries and the degrees of success achieved. For example, in community-based approaches or stricter, perhaps more liberal licensing schemes. Certainly that's an area that I've been heavily involved in, overseeing the current spate of applications under the new licensing legislation. So the work, in my view, will be most helpful for councillors, community groups and so on, grappling with the new licensing applications and the problem, of course, that we had perennially, which is the grandfather rights, something which we can't do anything about, unfortunately. Possibly because of the subject matter, on which most people cannot resist offering an opinion, of course, Raising the Bar is a very readable, indeed unput-downable book. Apart from those already mentioned, it should be, in my view, required reading for anyone charged with control or management of this difficult problem that encompasses the trade, if you like. That's from police officers to premises managers, through to medical and legal practitioners, policy makers, licensing authorities, government regulators, and certainly the producers and distributors of alcoholic beverages, who seem quite often to be unscathed by most of this. Criminologists, of course, have had a field day with this information. Obviously sociologists and social commentators also will find the book, I think, equally interesting and instructive. I came away realising that the swift, half-full, half-empty arguments that we have about this issue will continue to rage, and the work, I hope, helps to describe in 9 chapters the problem. The thing is, there's little likelihood, in my view, that we will get much change until attitudes change. And can I just add as a postscript to this, that we've tried very hard with the licensing legislation, but it hasn't worked. And frankly, I know it sounds gloomy, but unless something very tough in terms of a policy is taken, things are just going to get worse. And at the moment, we've got the evidence to show that there has to be a limit on the type of licensing that takes place. But of course, the government takes the line of responsibility and responsible drinking, and that hasn't worked either. So the arguments remain, half full, half empty. Let's see where we go from there. But thank you both, Kate and Ross, for a very, very useful book. Bye-bye.